Of course, you can also throw the other monster out and say, yeah, this is my city, I destroy the most. And obviously it's determined once the time limit runs out. That's pretty much how all these are determined. The time is what matters. As soon as the time limit ends, the winner's determined. Got, of course, a free-for-all, which is basically just like Smash Brothers. Fight to the death, and, well, nobody dies, everyone comes back, and that's pretty much how it's played. Whoever gets the most kills is the winner. And then, of course, you also got Team Battle. Again, like Smash Brothers, but whoever gets the most amount of kills, and of course you can keep coming back, is the winner. Not much to say, it's a lot of fun. And even survival mode makes a return. I don't think I have to say much there. Just make it through on more limited amounts of health until you pretty much lose it all. Pretty much the same thing as the previous game. And yes, once again, there are cheats in this game that can be very helpful. Not going to explain it, just look it up on whatever website that it is that you look them up on. It'll definitely help you. So, despite a few flaws here and there, this game is still pretty well worth it. It may have its share of flaws like I've addressed before with some controls, but I think you can overlook those things and get used to the game and just enjoy it for what it is. If you got, as I said, like the last game, Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, this game is no exception when it comes to whether you're playing with single player by yourself or playing multiplayer, which makes the gameplay even more enjoyable. It's Godzilla, and it's a pretty good successor to Destroy All Monsters. May not be as good, but hey, the graphics are better, and it obviously has more characters, so that shows you right there, it could still be king. Yeah. So, not to bring this one down by a notch, but I think it just deserves a plain 2 earmotes up. So, obviously the success of this game and the one that came before it, Destroy All Monsters, obviously there was another one that came out, not only for the Wii, but also for pretty much every console. Well, almost every console. This one was released not only on Nintendo Wii, which is the version I have right now, no PlayStation 2 version in my possession, but Xbox apparently got left in the dust on this one, or they didn't want to partake on this one. I wonder why, but yeah. And there was also a Nintendo DS version, but it was obviously a lot different, I'm sure, with the limitations of a Nintendo handheld console, but let's not get too carried away here. This is the version I got, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but there doesn't appear to be as many cities, though, as the previous game, and a few monsters got subtracted compared to the previous game as well. Though, of course, before I get to all that stuff, might as well get to the modes of gameplay, shall we? So, wait, what? This is it? Really? You got story, which is basically action. I might as well get this out of the way. And yay, select a monster and you play all the way through. You can save after you complete each level, and you get your typical cutscene, which, well, isn't even a cutscene. It's just a bunch of still images and dialogue that's pretty much subtitled. So, yeah, you have to know what to expect out of a Nintendo Wii, but I know Nintendo Wii can do better than this. I mean, come on, seriously? Again, it's all about just simple alien invasion. The monsters are divided up in factions and all that nonsense, and you do your basic objectives in your mission. So yeah, there's basic objectives, and most of them start out pretty easy, and some are optional, and some are required to beating it. And I gotta say, yeah, you could argue they got a little bit lazy this time around. So, and this time around, instead of the stuff that helps you, like regaining health and of course your meter to build up radiation to breathe out at your enemies or objects and so forth, all this stuff is basically in crystal form instead of floating around. And then you got basically all the stuff that you remember from the previous games, picking up buildings and so forth, throwing at your enemies, picking up enemies and throwing them, kicking, punching, it's all there. But as you can guess, hit detection wise, it is really iffy in this game, and I think it's a little bit worse than the last one, but you can get used to it. But yeah, I could see why this game was so negatively received. So that's basically what you'd expect out of story mode. Make your way through, beating, I believe, 18 missions, and then you beat it, and then you can just keep going and just get more points. Yes, again, you gotta get points to unlock things. cities. As you can tell, there's not as many in the previous game. Yeah, in the previous game, Destroy All Monsters to be exact, we had like 3 versions of every city. In this game, it's just 1 version of every city, and again, there's not that many of them. And monsters. Well, not as many, but this version apparently, from what I've heard, actually has more than the PlayStation 2 version. That's why I favored this one over PlayStation 2. I mean, isn't that... You want more monsters in the game? I mean, come on. It's a monster brawl game, that's what we want. But yeah, they brought most of the favorites back, and as you can tell, I don't have every single one unlocked. And again, you can actually cheat, and I guess I'll get it out of the way. Cheating helps if you want to try to unlock monsters quicker, like in the previous games. And in this game, of course, you can use cheat to get points and so forth, and unlock monsters, cities. So, and yes, again, you can try to unlock still photos and videos, but as you can tell, I am not enthusiastic about that. You want to get monsters and cities unlocked first, obviously. But before you get the monsters unlocked, they divided up all in factions, as I mentioned before. You have to unlock the different faction, like what that monster belongs to if you're looking to unlock him. Yes, they brought Jet Jaguar, you got King Ghidorah, Mecha King Ghidorah, 2 Mecha Godzillas, most of the familiar monsters, King Caesar and so forth, Space Godzilla, but depending on what faction they're in, like Earth Defenders, Aliens, and Monsters and so forth, you have to unlock that faction, which costs so many GAM points. And then you have to use even more points to unlock that particular monster. And then another one, and then another one. God. But as I said, the cheats help. Same thing with cities, too. But, like monsters, you have to unlock that certain set of cities. Ugh, it's just ridiculous. The easiest way, if you don't want to cheat, basically is just play through story mode over and over again, whether you're using the same or different monsters. So, yeah, you can, like I said, you can save in between. Now, yes, there is a training mode, but I don't think I really have to get involved with that. At the beginning of the story mode, it pretty much gives you the basics on what the control schemes are. So, there's really no need for that, unless you're really that confused on the controls. Now, I wouldn't mind the controls so much, is that so much of them require motion gestures. I really wish it was Gamecube controller compatible. And, well, this is Brawl mode. I expect it to be... What? Wait, this is... Oh, okay, so there's various modes of gameplay in Brawl mode. Okay, now I get it. So, where do I start? Yes, you got Versus mode, which is basically knock your opponent out in 2 rounds to win. Claim victory, and of course to be King of Monsters. You can go against 1, or 2, or 3, just like in the previous games, whether they're computer or human players. But of course, obviously I gotta go against computer opponents because, well, I don't have another human player to play with. And of course, being that this is a Wii third-party support game, it lacks Wi-Fi, as you expect. I guess the PlayStation 2 version had Wi-Fi, but I don't have that version on me. It's not too hard, but most of the time it can get a little bit frustrating depending on what monster and what environment you choose to fight in. And with more monsters, it does tend to get a lot more chaotic, obviously, so it's better to go against just one monster, unless you prefer all that chaos and wonky camera problems. As you can tell, these environments are really well detailed, but as you expect, it's Wii graphics, so you have to expect it to be a little bit limited, but I don't think it looks that bad. I mean, for one thing, a lot of these places have well more details with terrains, and water gets deep, and all that stuff, and it has buildings you can pick up, and it's fighting. Again, I know the controls are not perfect, but it does take a little getting used to, but it can be enjoyed. Then you got Melee mode, which is similar, but this time it's all about getting points by pulling off combos, picking up and throwing your opponent, and of course, picking up buildings and throwing them at them, and so forth. So yeah, points come up when it's obviously blue, that's in your favor, that's you getting the points, which is what you want to do. When it turns red or a different color, that's your opponent stealing the points right from you. So obviously you want to try to avoid doing that. And then you got Destruction mode, yes! Alright, this is sadly the only bonus game in this whole collection. Yes, there doesn't seem to be many bonus games in this, unless you can count the side mission objectives in story mode. Otherwise, this seems to be the only one. Yeah. But I'm glad they got rid of most of those ridiculous ones in Save the Earth, like basketball and dodgeball and so forth. Who needs that crap? I just want to be a monster and destroy buildings. Isn't that what they're known for in these films? I mean, this is a Godzilla game right here. But of course, you gotta compete with another monster. Once again, whether it could be 1, or 2, or 3 other monsters, it's battle for supremacy of the King of Destruction. King of Monsters, yeah. All about, once again, racking up points. And it's bittersweet. But, again, the controls do take a little getting used to, so, yeah, whether you're using your breathing radiation on them, picking up other small buildings and throwing the big ones, or just basically hitting them. Again, if you want to really cause massive destruction on the building, you gotta really use the motion controls. The basic non-motion controls don't do as much damage to your monsters or buildings and so forth, so yeah, again, you can pick up your other opponent and throw them out of the way and say, yeah, this is my city to destroy, bitch. Get out of the way. So, otherwise, it could be fun, but once again, I'd recommend another player, human player that is, to play with this. So I say despite a couple of graphical setbacks and so forth, being that it is of course a Nintendo Wii game, I'd still give it a shot. I mean, you got most of the characters that you Godzilla fans probably known and loved for generations. I mean, you got Jet Jaguar returning, and once again, yes, of course, with a certain button combination, just like Mothra. Of course, you start out in the larva form, and you have to, of course, know the button combination to turning into the butterfly, because of course the larva is completely useless, can't pick up buildings. With the butterfly mode, you got all the advantages. You can pick up enemies, buildings, and everything. Larva form sucks. Jet Jaguar is awesome, but has the shrinking ability, which does build up a little bit of speed, but I don't know. His moves feel a little bit iffy, as you can tell. So, yeah. And you got, of course, two Mecha Godzillas. You got Mecha King Ghidorah. You got many versions of Godzilla from the 50s and the 90s and so forth. So, you got a nice wide character selection here with, you know, giant monsters in this game, and it's at least playable for what it's worth. I wouldn't say terrible, but yeah, I could argue it's definitely not the best Godzilla game compared to the previous two. So, it's a Godzilla game, but I wouldn't say it's King of Monsters. But it's at least playable. So, yeah, your best bet's to stick with these two. This one, for some reason, is really pricey. And honestly, I don't know why. I mean, I know it has more monsters to unlock compared to the PlayStation 2 version, but I ended up paying almost $40 for this one. But it's not really that great, but it's not that terrible either. Not to be bashing this one, but I give it a pretty fair rating of a Rock and Wii Remote with Wii Motion Plus up, and a plain remote down. Not to be too harsh on this one, but it's still playable. So, till next time, happy gaming, and thus ends my Godzilla game marathon. And yeah, I know there's one more that I'm forgetting about, you know, PlayStation 4, but it's going to have to wait for another time. Obviously, this has been a monster marathon of Godzilla games, so till next time, happy gaming.